Welcome to your seventh grade English class, Unit 1, The Giver by Lois Lowry. This week, we're going to start on this novel, but before we actually dig into the novel, we have some background building to do. Our essential question for this week is what role does sameness play in dystopian literature? That word dystopian may be very unfamiliar to you, but I promise by the end of this week, you will know what a dystopian society is all about. I'm going to preview Friday's essay prompt each day this week so you will have an idea of what you have coming up. You will have to write an essay explaining how the value of sameness in Harrison Bergeron and The Giver, and possibly Divergent, only the first chapter, affects the characters living within the communities. Cite several pieces of evidence to support your analysis. This slide kind of gives you an idea of where we're going this week. Monday, we are working with two articles. The first one is entitled, Why Do We Like Dystopian Novels? The second one is called The Making of the World. Tuesday, you're going to read a short story called Harrison Bergeron. Wednesday, we start the novel, The Giver, Chapter 1. Thursday, The Giver, Chapter 2. And Friday, you will work on your essay. Do now. List at least 5 rules you are expected to follow in your daily lives. I'll give you 2 minutes. Go. 2 minutes is really a long time. Most of you should be finished by now. If you aren't, then you'll have more time to finish later. If you are in the independent station listening to this recording, you don't have to turn and talk to anyone. You will discuss with a partner when you come to the teacher-led directed instruction station with me. Let's get into the first article. The first article is entitled, Why Do We Like Dystopian Novels? I'm going to read the article for you, and there will be several questions on this video where you will have to stop and answer. So let's get started. War, death, despair, oppression, environmental ruin. Yep. When it comes to demoralizing literature, dystopian novels have it all. Yet many of us love this genre, and there are good reasons we do. For one thing, we're reading about rather than actually living through the bad stuff happening in the near or far future. Thought that bad stuff often an extrapolation of our troubled current world. We're not in the arena like the beleaguered tributes of the Hunger Games, the dystopian trilogy I recently finished. And while dystopian novels are depressing, there's a certain rightness in reading about a future that's negative. Why? Because we know that politicians, military people, and corporate moguls are capable of doing awful things, meaning dystopian novels feel kind of honest. The Hunger Games certainly felt honest. That terrific trilogy gives its memorable characters some uplifting moments, but there are a greater number of downbeat outcomes, especially in the third installment, Mockingjay. So, Even though The Hunger Games, first book, and Catching Fire, second book, are more engaging, a bit often horrific, the final book truly rings true. Dictatorship, revolution, and counter revolution usually cause several physical and psychological damage to the victims and other participants. To her credit, the author Suzanne Collins doesn't sanitize that for us. Other excellent dystopian novels are also filled with carnage, inhumanity, hopelessness, and more. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, George Orwell's 1984, An Animal Farm, H.G. Wells's The Time Machine, and The Shape of Things to Come, Mary Shelley's The Last Man, Lois Lowry's The Giver, Cormac McCarthy's The Road, Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, Anthony Burgess's A Clockwork Orange, William Golding's Lord of the Flies, Sinclair Lewis' It Can Happen Here, Jack London's The Iron Heel, Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, Onyx and Crake, The Year of the Flood, etc. Whew, that's lots of examples. Sometimes authors of dystopian literature temporarily ease the tension a bit with humor, as the great Atwood does with some of the clever genetic engineering terms she coined for Oryx and Crake. And dystopian books can have seemingly utopian elements, with things not appearing too bad even though they are bad. Brave New World is a perfect example. There are even novels such as The Shape of Things to Come that mix dystopian and actual utopian elements. We admire the best dystopian novels because they're written well and depict people we can relate to. We're fascinated by the terrible things these characters face and by how some react bravely and some react cowardly or with resignation. We, as readers, rubberneck to see the misery. We can't avert our eyes, even as we're engaged by what despots and other vicious officials are doing to citizens. And we're compelled to turn the pages as we wonder if rebels and other members of the populace can somehow remake a wretched society into something more positive. We also wonder who will survive and who won't. I was surprised by some of the characters who end up dying in The Hunger Games, a trilogy I read on the enthusiastic recommendation of commentator blah, 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 blah. Last but not least, we admire dystopian novels because by giving us worst case scenarios of the future, maybe our current society can be jolted enough to avoid those scenarios eventually happening in real life. Like some of the characters in dystopian novels, we might feel a little against all odds hope. Then again, maybe not. What are your favorite dystopian novels and why do you like them? Or are you not that fond of the genre and why? Moving on to article number 2, which really gets into listing some of the characteristics of dystopian novels. This article's title is The Making of the World. One of the most important things that separates a dystopian novel from all the rest is simply setting. While the setting of any novel is important, the setting of a dystopian novel is key. It is, after all, the changing world that makes a dystopian novel a dystopian. I'm going to allow you to read this one on your own, and you will definitely have some questions to answer following.